Well, there's been several things that you lied about.
Name them.
Okay, well, I'm going to show you one of them. You said you were carrying a Judith Lieber bag. You weren't.
What?
You were not.
I never said that.
She said, is it a Judith Lieber? You said, yes, honey.
Is that a Lieber bag?
How did you know, honey?
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl, the Brooke Ashley, and today we are here to discuss The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Season 16, Reunion Part 2. And before we get into it, let me start off by saying that Shamea, you are going out sad. And it's really painful because I was rooting for you. I just knew that you were about to be that girl. You came in hot and you fizzled out quickly. Shamea, unfortunately, I'm going to have to whack you all throughout this second part because, girl, you tried it. And if I'm being really honest, Shamea, I don't know if it was a great idea making you full-time. I think that you might have been better off being a friend of, because this performance at this reunion has been horrible. And then all this beef that you're having on Instagram, you're going back and forth with Porsha and Drew, making yourself look even worse. Because the way Porsha and Drew are clocking you with the receipts, it's not a good look, Miss Mamas. But yes, Shamea, we're gonna have to have a talk because I don't know what's going on with you, but again, you're going out sad. And also, Shamea, this woe is me act, I'm always the victim, it's grown stale. We're all tired. You're not innocent either. Porsha isn't always the villain. You're also at fault about a few things as well, and we're gonna touch on that later on. But Shamea, girl, you tried it, and it really hurt my heart to see you go out this sad in this second part. But guys, without further ado, let's jump right on into it because you guys already know that we don't have a minute to spare. So we open up part 2 with a continuation of Angela going at it with Phaedra and Porsha. So Porsha says that Marcus was lying in between, and Angela's upset. She's like, what is he lying about? Where's the lie? That he doesn't know Phaedra? And Phaedra jumps in and she says, once again, I don't know that man and he doesn't know me. So Angela says, well, he knows your brother and your sister. And Phaedra says, so because he knows my brother, that means I know him? I don't know everybody that my brother knows. Again, Angela, I told you in the last recap, your receipts were sloppy, they weren't tight enough, they did not prove anything. And just like Phaedra said, I don't know everybody that my siblings know. They have acquaintances and friends that I've never met before, and vice versa. That's a reach to say that because Phaedra's brother knows Marcus or Junebug or whoever, that Phaedra knows them too. So now Shamea jumps in to defend Angela, and she's like, honestly, I don't believe that Angela would set this thing up about her marriage. Like, that would be bogus of her to do that. So Porsha jumps back in and says, well, I'm not saying that Angela set this whole thing up. But what I'm saying is, when it comes to Phaedra being involved, it doesn't make sense. So now Andy jumps in and he goes on to ask Angela, what would be Phaedra's motivation to do this? So Angela says, because Phaedra self-produces, she likes to spin the narrative. And I said, I'm sorry, Angela, but that's not a good enough answer for me. I feel like, personally, it's a bit too easy to pin this on Phaedra because of her past. And the same way I thought that Phaedra was behind this in the very beginning, now with new information being presented, your receipts not really doing it for us, I'm just not so sure that this was Phaedra. Phaedra would have a lot to lose, knowing that a lot of the viewers still side-eye her about what she did 8 years ago. So again, I just feel like that's not a good enough answer to say, well, she self-produces. Okay, a lot of these housewives do. What's your point? If you're going to accuse somebody to this magnitude, the receipts need to be on point. Now, maybe it's just me, but I felt like during this segment, Angela kind of lost the plot. Because now she brings up Charles. She's like, yeah, just like you claimed that you knew my husband. So Phaedra says, well, yes, I did hang out with him 10 years ago, but I have met your husband. So Angela's like, you don't know my husband, and my husband does not know you. So Phaedra says, okay, girl, I guess. So now Angela goes on to add that everything that Phaedra has said about her has been a lie. So Phaedra says, girl, I haven't even talked about you because nobody even knows who you are. So Angela and Phaedra have a back and forth. They're both shading each other. Angela says, well, the folks who do don't know about you. I said, all right, Angela. So Angela goes on to say that all of Phaedra's faves know about her. Phaedra was quick with it. She was like, okay, and what faves are those? So Angela's like, girl, you wish that you were in the rooms that I'm in. So Phaedra low-key ate. I'm not even gonna hold you. She says, baby, I'm in all the rooms that I need to be in. I'm in the rooms with the Oscar and Emmy winners. Check that. So I said, all right, let them know. Now, Angela had me screaming, saying that Phaedra is breaking into these rooms. So Phaedra says, wait, am I a robber now? I said, not a robber. And what made it even funnier was the fact that Andy was getting a kick out of them going back and forth. So Angela says, no, you're not a robber, you're a liar. So Phaedra was so fed up. She's like, you know what, Andy, can I please get my phone? I need to call my brother. So they bring out her phone. She calls her brother Jock, and she's like, hey, Jock, I'm here at the reunion. You're being recorded, but do you know a Kim so-and-so? Because Angela's saying that you knew her, you went to high school with her, and because of that, she's accusing me of being a part of this scheme where this guy said that Charles was cheating on her. So let's just clear this up. So Phaedra's brother makes it clear that he has no idea who this Kim lady is. He says, sorry to this woman, never heard of her. So now Angela says, oh, but you're Facebook friends with her. So Jock says, look, Facebook friends or not, I don't know this lady, never heard of her, like, I'm not in any of this. So Angela's still not buying it. She's like, oh, okay, it's your brother, I get it. The same way you had some woman come up to me at the Hawks game saying that she has the hands. So Phaedra and Andy are both like, wait, what? So Angela explains that a while ago, she was at a Hawks game and Phaedra was there with some other woman, and the woman came up to Angela saying, hey, my name is so-and-so, and I have the hands. So when I tell you that Phaedra was so confused, she was like, wait, are you saying that I had somebody threaten you? This is my first time ever hearing about this. Why didn't you ever mention this? So Angela says, because I don't move like that, Phaedra. And I said, now hold on, Angela, let me whack you quickly. Because if somebody's friend threatened me, I would address that immediately. I'm sorry, Angela, but I felt like you were losing steam in this argument. And it just felt like you want to pin everything on Phaedra. So now Andy's going around the group asking who believes that Phaedra set this whole thing up. So Drew says, well, I mean, when I spoke to Marcus, he was scared. He was afraid to come forward. And Phaedra interjects and she says, I did not pay that man. And like I told you guys, I'm starting to believe that Phaedra was not involved in this. We've yet to see any screenshots of a Zelle or a Venmo or a Cashapp payment go through. So, you know, there haven't been any substantial receipts that lead me to believe that this was Phaedra. I believe that this was a scheme that Angela set up and it backfired. And I think that Angela is a great housewife. She knows how to play the game well. She's witty, she's quick on her feet. The shade is on point, but I think that she made a big misstep with this whole Marcus, Junebug, Junior mess. Now Andy turns to Cynthia and he's like, Cynthia, who do you believe did it? And when I tell you that Cynthia went around and around the mulberry bush, I said, girl, can you just say who you think did it? And I didn't notice this in the first part, but when they did the close-up on Cynthia in the second part, I said, who did Cynthia's makeup? In the words of Funky Dineva, that makeup was giving us cremation number 9. I mean, it is no shade, but Cynthia, this makeup look, they contoured you too much. It wasn't a good look. But Cynthia's non-answer was annoying me so bad. I said, just say who you think it is. Do you think Angela set this whole thing up, or do you think Phaedra did? Yes or no? My goodness. You can always tell when Andy's getting bored by a segment because he was like, okay, let's move on. We're obviously not going to find out who did this, so let's just talk about something else. So now Andy goes on to ask Angela, where does she stand with all the women in this group? So Angela says that there are some more issues that need to be ironed out in this group, but she does believe that the group as a whole can move forward. So now Kelly interjects to address Angela about how Angela had said on the after show a few months ago that Kelly was wishing bad on her marriage. So Angela says, yep, I did say that. Kelly, what's your point? So Kelly says, I never compared your marriage to mine. I don't remember saying that. Now we see some unseen footage of when they were at Cynthia's Bailey Q, and Kelly made a comment about her marriage used to be in the same position as Angela's marriage, and she would hate to see Angela in the same spot as her. So once again, Kelly says, yeah, I never wished bad or compared my marriage to yours. So Angela says, yes, you did, Kelly. And I said, look, Kelly, we just saw the unseen footage. You pretty much did compare your marriage to Angela's. And let's not forget when Britt was hooting and hollering about, oh yeah, that side baby, let's talk about that. You were in the background cheering Britt on. You were like, oh yeah, the side baby, the side baby. So let's not act like you were so supportive of Angela's marriage. But Kelly does say, look, if I said that, I was in no way trying to disrespect your marriage, and I'm sorry. So now Andy reads a viewer question about Angela's age. And the viewer wrote, look, Angela, you're a gorgeous woman, but I just don't believe that you're 44. People lie all the time. How old are you? So Angela was prepared for this one little thing because she pulls out her birth certificate, hands it to Andy, and Andy confirms that she was born in 1981, which makes her 44. Now, I have always maintained that Angela is a beautiful woman, but when I first saw Angela, I thought that she was older. For whatever reason, Angela presents as an older woman, and there's no shade with that statement. But I thought that Angela was a well-preserved 55. Something about her demeanor, it's not giving 44. And especially standing next to Porsha and Shamia, who are the same age, they present a lot younger. Angela presents like the older sister to Porsha and Shamia. But again, Angela's face card, that body is T, beautiful woman, hands down. Whether she's 44, 54, 64, she looks amazing. So now Andy brings up Phaedra's shade, where Phaedra said that Angela is the oldest looking young woman she's ever seen. And Phaedra says, let me clarify something. I said that after the allegations about me setting this whole thing up with Marcus. Now, when I tell you that Angela could not wait to read Phaedra down, she says, no, baby, let's not forget about how you came on this show looking, you looked old too. If I'm 53, then you're 63. And Phaedra had nothing to say. She was like, all right now. And Phaedra knew she had to take that L on the chin because Phaedra, we all remember what you looked like when you first came on. We were all shocked to learn that you were only 37. Phaedra came on here looking like she was 57 with those dated church lady fashions. She came on the scene with those kitten heels, okay? I already know that somebody in the comments is going to be mad at me, and that's okay. I couldn't help myself. But Miss Phaedra Parks has come a long way, okay? So I was glad that Angela let her know, like, sis, you will not sit up here and play me because we did not forget what you came on this show looking like. Because the North remembers. And Andy is so shady because he did not have to go down the list of all the shade that's been thrown about Angela's age and appearance, because he brings up Shamia's shade, calling her nose a retro nose, a 99 nose, and we find out that Angela got her nose done in 2017. And everybody was shocked to hear that, even Andy, because that nose definitely gives you 90s. So now Andy reads another viewer question asking Angela, is she perimenopausal because she always has her fan, because she's always so hot? And Angela says reluctantly that yes, it probably is that. So they're all like, girl, don't feel ashamed. We all have to go through it. Cynthia says, yeah, perimenopause can start as early as 36. So girl, like, it's all right. And I said, I mean, nobody was surprised because Angela is always burning up. Wherever they are, that fan is with her 24/7. So if that's not a dead giveaway that she's in perimenopause, then I don't know what is. But good for Angela that she's starting her fan line, and I'm sure that her fans are going to sell out. So now Andy wants to know about Angela's investment properties, and Angela says, what investment properties? We find out that the homes were foreclosed on. It got to be too much for her. I think she says that it was costing her over $100,000 each month to keep up, and she thought that she was going to lose everything. So on top of dealing with that, she lost her mom. So she says it was a lot. Now, I really felt bad for Angela because I can only imagine the stress to have all these homes, to be in that much debt. That is very stressful. And I also want to say shout out to Angela for being honest about that, because so many times housewives are embarrassed when they have financial issues and they'll sit up there and lie and make excuses. But Angela was upfront. She was honest. She said, look, it was a hardship. I had to let them go. They were foreclosed on. It was a lot going on. So good for her for being honest and not trying to evade the question or sit up there and lie like some others would have done. And respectfully, I think that Angela took on a lot more than she could handle. I think maybe going forward, she's better off just buying one rental property at a time instead of buying 5. But Angela goes on to say that she was hoping that her mom could discuss her bipolar journey and how she's handling it, and the fact that her mom died, it was sudden, it was way too soon, and she can't believe it. Again, my heart goes out to Angela. My condolences to her and her family, and I really hope that she's able to take some time to grieve and mourn her mom, but I just can't imagine the stress that she was under dealing with the loss of her mother and a huge financial burden. So now Andy reads another viewer question asking Angela if she feels like Drew had her back the way she had Drew's back, because at Cynthia's Bailey Q, when she was going at it with Britt, Drew was nowhere to be found. And Angela says, yeah, I did not feel like Drew had my back, even in the finale episode. And you have Porsha chiming in saying, yeah, Drew, because you left. So Drew is shocked to hear this. She says, Angela, I had your back till the very end. I was with you every step of the way. So now she addresses Porsha's comments about how Drew left in the finale episode. And Drew says, well, actually, I left to go find Marcus. That's why I was gone. So now you have Cynthia adding her 2 cents about how Angela really rode hard for Drew all season and it felt unbalanced. And I said, Cynthia, respectfully, it feels like you just want to say anything to have some camera time. And I don't like this whole notion of let's beat up on Drew. Because truth be told, nobody's given Drew a break. Nobody's rallied around her, even though she's dealing with a whole divorce with Ralph. We've seen cast members going out to dinner with him. Nobody's asked her how she's doing. It seems like nobody cares. So I just feel like cut Drew some slack. And Drew does make it clear that that was never her intention to hurt Angela's feelings. She says, look, Angela, I always thought that we were building a genuine friendship. If I could not show up for you in the capacity that you wanted me to, please know that it's because I'm dealing with my own stuff and I don't know what to say right now, but I am sorry. And I said, exactly. The same way we've seen other housewives have their outbursts, leave folks hanging, then allow Drew some grace too. Drew has gotten 0 grace from any of these women. And I understand that Angela is hurt, but I do feel like, Angela, cut your friend some slack because Drew does have your back. Now, Shamea, why you felt the need to butt in is beyond me. I just said, girl, please just be quiet. And truth be told, Shamea did not deserve the first seat. Drew deserved the first seat, if you ask me. If Shamea was at the end, I would not have been upset. I felt like Shamea being first seat at this reunion was a waste of everybody's time. But again, I digress. So Shamea jumps in saying, Drew, don't take this as me defending Porsha, but I have to ask you, why is it okay for you to excuse not defending Angela, but when it came to me and Porsha's friendship, you picked it apart, talking about how lopsided it was. And I just said, Shamea, we're not talking about you and Porsha right now. Let Drew and Angela have their moment, please. I just said, what are we talking about right now? And also, Shamea, everybody picked your friendship apart with Porsha because you were whining to everybody in the group about how you don't feel supported. So don't act like folks just talked about your friendship out of nowhere. You gave them the license to talk about your friendship because you brought it up first. Drew wasn't here for it. She was like, girl, bye. Nobody picks anything apart. And then she really had me screaming. She was like, Shamea, I want so much better for you. I said, ooh. So now we pivot and Andy brings up, why did Phaedra skip the Married to Medicine reunion? And Phaedra laughs and says, well, I had nothing else to give them. They didn't want me there. They did not realize my worth and my value. That's why. And I said, oh, okay, Phaedra, that's the reason. All right, we'll go with that. Just for argument's sake, we'll go with that. But I don't believe it. So now Andy goes on to ask Phaedra, why did she feel the need to take on the big sister role when it came to Britt Edie? And Phaedra says, because I noticed on the trip that she was self-sabotaging herself. She was making more enemies than friends. That's why. So now Porsha goes on to say that she's never seen an OG housewife give a newbie advice like that on camera. And I said, that's not true. We've seen plenty of OG and veteran housewives give the new girl some advice on camera. Unless I'm wrong. And one more thing. Phaedra, Porsha, and Cynthia have been on this show for a long time, but they are not OGs. OGs are the ones who are on since season 1, episode 1. Nene, Kim, Sheree, they're OGs. Everybody else are vets. And Porsha says that Phaedra and Nene gave her that kind of advice off camera, not on camera. So now Kelly jumps in and says that they also had a conversation with Britt as well. And now Shamea jumps in and reveals that Britt was speaking very poorly about Phaedra. And Kelly jumps back in and says, yeah, Britt wasn't feeling you or Porsha. And then Shamea goes on to say that while they were trying to help Britt, Britt was trying to sabotage them. So now Phaedra says, look, at the end of the day, we're all going to have experiences with each other in this group. And I've noticed that certain people in this group are making conclusions based on one experience. So Angela's like, wait, is that towards me? And Phaedra says, yeah, it could be, because although we did have a bad experience, I did reach out to you when your mom died, and I want you to know that that was real. So Phaedra says, look, bottom line, life is too short to lose a friendship over absolutely nothing, and we're here today, gone tomorrow. So Angela agrees with that, and it looks like Phaedra and Angela have finally put their beef to bed, and I said, well, thank God for that, because it would be nice to see Phaedra and Angela actually be friendly or be friends or whatever, but I want to see them on a good note and not always going back and forth. Now, Shamea, this is where it's going to get real rocky, because the lack of communication, the passive aggressive nature, I was annoyed. And throughout this segment, you're going back and forth about how you really feel. And I'm just like, stand 10 toes down in your emotions. Why is that so difficult? But Andy reads a viewer question asking Porsha, why was it so easy for her to get back cool with Phaedra when Phaedra lied on her best friend, had her roped into that nonsense as well? And where is that same grace for Shamea? So Porsha says that it was time that led her to get back cool with Phaedra. She says that years later, a conversation was had and they were able to resolve it and move on. And then she goes on to say that that's not to say that the same can't happen with me and Shamea. So now Andy reads a viewer question asking Shamea, does she feel like Porsha gave Phaedra a pass way too easily, considering the fact that Phaedra lied on Shamea, saying that Shamea was zipping it and zooing it with other people's husbands? So they play the flashback of when Phaedra said that back in 2017, that infamous season 9 where all that mess went down. So now Andy goes on to ask if they ever sat down and resolved the issue, because Shamea still seems bothered. So Shamea says that no, she never sat down with the both of them. And now Porsha interjects and says, wait, hold on now. As your best friend, we did have a conversation. And Shamea says, yes, you're right. You and I had a conversation, but we didn't all have a conversation. So before I whack Shamea, let me just get you first, Phaedra. Because when you said to Shamea that your feelings were hurt to hear what Shamea was saying about you in the interviews every time she was asked about this, I said, but Phaedra, you publicly embarrassed Shamea for no reason in season 9. Making that statement to say that she's sleeping with other people's husbands, you said that with no concern, no care. It was so callous. Anybody would still be upset by that. especially if there was never a proper apology. So you don't really have the right to say that your feelings were hurt, that Shamea was bad-mouthing you, when you never gave her a real apology. So Phaedra says, look, Shamea, remember before I came back on the show, you and I had a private conversation. We talked for a long time. And Shamea says, yeah, I remember the conversation, but you were a bit dismissive, pretty much saying that it was a beef between you and Candy, and that was that. But you never addressed what you said about me. So Phaedra's confused, and she's like, but Shamea, why didn't you address that with me during our conversation? And I said, now hold on, Phaedra. I don't think that you need to have somebody address that. You remember what you said. You know that what you said was wrong and nasty and mean. You should have said, hey girl, what I said was messed up. I'm sorry. I don't think that anybody needs to prompt you to apologize about making a remark like that on national TV. And that's my issue with Phaedra. It takes her forever and a day for her to apologize and admit when she's wrong. Phaedra, what you said was wrong. That apology should have been offered up immediately. So Shamea says, bottom line, we never had a conversation about the allegations that were said about me. So now Andy jumps in and he's like, Shamea, are you still bothered by that? So Shamea's like, well, hey, it is what it is. It happened. I said, Shamea, this is your time to speak up. Get it off of your chest. And that's my issue with you. That's why I can't ride for you like I did in the beginning, because you're showing yourself to be passive aggressive and you're not the innocent victim. Speak up. You have a voice, use it. I would have said, yes, I am still pissed off about it. I want my apology. And if we're being very honest with you, there is no way on God's green earth that me and Phaedra would still be cool had I not received that apology. Because I'm somebody where if you do me wrong, I need to hear that I'm sorry. I've always been like that since I was a little child. If my parents, I felt, were a little too tough on me or whatever, I wanted to hear that apology. Like, we were not moving on until I heard, Brooke, I'm sorry. That went for teachers, like friends, like I can't, I'm somebody where I need to hear it. If you can't give me that I'm sorry, then we're done. Like, I don't play that. So Phaedra would have given me that apology a long time ago. It would have been a private and a public apology, and I would have gotten that I'm sorry. The fact that Shamea is still trying to downplay how she feels when she's clearly hurt is ridiculous. And even Cynthia and Angela called you out. They said, no, girl, you're visibly shaken up about what happened 8 years ago. Just say that. Just own it. Again, Shamea, I can't feel that sorry for you when you can't even own how you feel. You're inflicting your own pain and suffering by not speaking up. So Phaedra finally apologizes, and now Shamea says, but why did you say that? So Phaedra says, well, you did tell me in our conversation that it was laughable and nobody would believe it anyway. And Shamea says, well, that's what I said to cope with it. And I was glad when Cynthia jumped in and clocked it. She said, but Shamea, that's the issue. You act like things don't bother you when they really do. And Cynthia is correct. And Shamea, you are way too passive. Again, that's why I can't get on Porsha that much anymore, because you're a big part of the problem too. You act like everything is all good and it's really not. If you're still mad at your friend for what they did or what they said, express that. And Phaedra did have a point when she said, here I am thinking that we're all good, but you're over here ripping me a new asshole in interviews. How does that work? And she does have a valid point. If you said that we're all good, but then you go back and talk about me, well, clearly we're not all good. And you're being phony. And nobody has the time for this. Because I'm somebody where if you piss me off, I need some time. And I'm very quick to say, you know what? Maybe let's put this friendship on pause. Maybe let's take some time away from each other. I need some time. Because I'm not happy. I'm not going to sit up here and act like we're all good when we're not. And Shamea, you are to blame for that. You were sitting up there showing all 32 teeth with Phaedra, but then saying another thing in the interviews. I'm sorry, Miss Mamas, but you need to work on your communication skills. You are too grown. Your money is too long for you not to get the help that you need to better communicate. Just saying. But Shamea let me down in this moment. I said, wow, Shamea, the fact that you still can't express your feelings at the reunion is really something. So Shamea accepts Phaedra's apology and she says, when asked about it going forward, I'm going to say she apologized and we're good. So they're all like, well, thank the Lord. So Andy's like, okay, guys, it's time for lunch. See you back here in 45 minutes. They all go back to their dressing rooms. We see Shamea on the phone with her husband. He sent over some flowers, and she's telling him how she didn't have enough time to get what she wanted to get off her chest. And I said, Shamea, that's your fault. Don't blame anybody else. That's your fault for not saying how you really felt. But we see all the husbands and baby daddies arrive. We see Porsha asking Dennis if he has any bombs that he's gonna drop. And he's like, no, I don't have any. Then we see Charles dancing with Angela. And this moment was actually really cute. I said, Charles, this is what we want to see when you are around your wife. Because this dry stuff, not being affectionate, I don't like that. But you dancing with her, giving her a hug, saying that she looks good, yes, more of that. Let's keep that up. So now we're back on the stage, and Andy starts it off talking about Britt, Edie, and Kenya not being in attendance. So he reads Kenya's statement on Twitter addressing her absence from the reunion, and then he reads Britt's statement addressing her absence from the reunion as well. Now, I'm not going to hold you guys. We're going to breeze past this segment because there's no point in talking about it when they're both not there. And Bravo, I think it's so messed up that you did not invite Kenya. Even if Kenya was on that stage for like 5 minutes, she deserved to be there to discuss her side of things. I just feel like when you have a scandal that big that dominated the headlines and the blogs for almost a year, we deserve to have both parties or one of the parties show up to that reunion to discuss their side of things. And the fact that neither one of them are there, there's really no point in rehashing their segment. Someone on Twitter made a great point that they believe that had Kenya pulled that stunt at a dinner, it might have gone over a bit better. But the fact that she did it at her hair spa grand opening where the press was there, she had influencers there, that's what made it crazier because you had outside people who weren't on the cast. But people feel like had she done it at a dinner or maybe at someone's home, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I don't know. I just saw that on Twitter. Let me know if you guys agree. Andy talking about an investigation was done on both parties. Do any of us care at this point? Kenya was let go. Britt got to stay on. I don't know how thorough that investigation was because, like I said before, if you were going to fire Kenya, Britt should have been fired as well. Because I can assure you that had this gone on an all-white franchise, there would have been an immediate termination had somebody threatened a cast member with a gun, in my opinion. So now we get to Shamea's segment, and Andy opens it up by discussing Shamea and Britt's fallout. And he goes on to ask Shamea, did she think it was strange that when they were in Grenada, Britt gave her that great speech about supporting her and loving her, and then she turned on her by saying that Shamea was faking the story about her daughter being sick. So Shamea says, look, I can handle infidelity rumors, I can handle my friendship with Porsha being fractured, but don't talk about my kids. So Shamea starts crying and says that nobody in this group could walk a mile in her shoes, and I'm not going to sit up there and deny that. I don't think that a lot of people could handle what Shamea is going through when it comes to her daughter, Shiloh. I have such a soft spot for sick kids. It always gets me super emotional, and I can only imagine what Shamea and her husband go through dealing with her little baby's health issues. So no argument there. I'm sure that none of these women, a lot of people could not handle what Shamea is going through. Now, I was happy to hear when Andy asked about how is Shiloh doing now, and we find out that Shiloh is doing well. She had 2 surgeries, and I think Shamea said that she got tubes in her ear so that way she can hear better. And we saw the picture of her and Shia together, and they are just so cute. So now Andy goes on to ask about the surrogate process, and Shamea shares that they have a new surrogate because the old surrogate had a failed transfer. So I think she's down to 1 more embryo, and she's nervous. So now Andy reads a viewer question asking Shamea about her husband pressuring her to have another baby despite her fertility issues, and is there a mandate where Shamea has to give him a son? And Shamea seemed a bit defensive when this question was asked. She's like, well, no, there is no mandate that I have to give him a son, but I do want to please my husband because he goes out of his way to please me. And then she goes on to say that it's not like he's going to leave her. Now, did anybody catch Phaedra's facial expression when she said that? it was giving very much like, all right, girl, whatever you say. Now, when it comes to Shamea trying to expand her family, no comment. All I have to say is God bless. I hope it all works out. So now Andy reads a viewer question asking Shamea why she always comparing her singing to Drew. Drew was a household name and a triple threat. And Shamea does acknowledge that. She says, yes, Drew is, and I'm so happy for her, but she threw shade about me being a lapdog, so I shaded her songs. So Drew brings up the radio interview where she was called a liar. And of course, this leads into an argument between Shamea and Drew. Drew had me screaming because she says, Shamea, I got you something. It's the book, The 5 Love Languages. Shamea was like, oh yeah, I already read that. So Kelly grabs the book and she's like, well, can I have it? And now Andy jumps in and he's like, Shamea, what did you think about Drew saying that you sing off key? And Shamea says, well, it's really funny because she's been trying to plan a showcase and she's yet to do it. And Drew's like, Shamea girl, stop. You shaded me and called me a liar. And Shamea's like, because you are a liar at times. You do lie about things. So when I tell you that Drew channeled her inner Sutton Stracke, she was like, name them. Name them.
Name them.
I
Name them.
don't know if you're okay, actually.
Name them.
Are you okay?
Name them.
Sutton, I know I wear your desperate self out every single season of Beverly Hills, but that name a moment was iconic. You ate that one little thing. I will give you that. So Shamea, you truly thought that you had something at this moment because you said, well, I'll show you a lie right here. So she says, you were going around earlier this season saying that Judith Lieber bag is real. Well, it's not. So Drew's like, it's real. And Shamea says, no, it's not. So Shamea has this black bag, and inside the bag is the same purse that Drew had when she met up with Angela. But this purse is not a Judith Lieber purse. It is a replica from Akira. So Shamea's like, yeah, girl, it's from Akira, only $130.
It was from Akira.
It wasn't.
It was this bag. It was $130.
So I'll post the receipt.
Let me see the receipt.
Yeah, I'll take the fake bag.
Shamea,
I want to see. I want to see.
Portia wants the bag.
I'll take the fake.
Portia wants the bag.
Let's wait and see how this ends.
So you have Drew saying, no, mine is real. It's in my closet. And Shamea's like, where are the receipts? So let me just stop right here. Okay, Drew, the way I would have embarrassed Shamea on that couch immediately, because call me what you want, but I have every single receipt for every designer purchase that I have ever made. You will not ever sit up here and play me. And also, I would have taken out my phone and I would have shown the receipt in my email, because don't get it twisted. Once you're in the database, you get your receipts emailed to you. So my phone would have been out and it would have been, Shamea, here you go.
Bling, bling, bling. Bitches is mad.
And I'm so crazy, I would have pulled up my Chase app or my American Express app and said, no, girl, that $5,795 was deducted from my account, okay? It is paid for, it is real. Don't do it, girl. This is 100% real. Stop. Shamea, I would have worn you out for that. And Shamea, you're really going out sad because you pressed Drew on posting the receipts. Drew posted her receipts on her Instagram story immediately after the reunion aired. She bought her Judith Lieber at Bergdorf Goodman. And the fact that you clap back on your Instagram stories still saying that her receipts are fake and the bag is still a replica, I'm just like, what are we doing? Then you have Judith Lieber coming to Drew's defense saying, no, Drew's Judith Lieber is real. It's just crazy to me how everybody wants to act like Drew is this crazy liar. It's so annoying. And I noticed that once you get a label attached to you on these shows, it is so hard to shake it off. Because it's like whatever Drew says or does, she's always painted as the liar. And then for you to try to embarrass Drew, but then admit on your Instagram story that you also own the same fake bag, I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, it's just, I don't know, Shamea, but it's not landing. And this whole stunt that she pulled, pulling out the fake bag to prove that she's a liar, It was a chop for me. Drew was not fazed at all. She was like, girl, you had been calling me a liar before that, and you had nothing, so you tried to find something. I said, exactly. So now we move on from that, and Andy turns to Porsha, and he's like, Porsha, did you think that Britt was being malicious when she brought up how Shamea was showing text messages of yours? Like, what did you think about that? So Porsha says, yes, I did think that she was being malicious. She was doing it out of spite because she was being thrown out of the alliance. Now remember how it was brought up in the first part that there was an alliance created between Shamea, Kelly, and Britt? That alliance. And now Porsha does confirm that those were her text messages. So now Andy goes on to ask Kelly if she was present when Shamea was showing Britt the text. So you have Kelly being a good friend, and she says, oh no, I don't remember all that. I didn't see any text from Shamea. Now I said, Kelly, we all know that you and Shamea are now best friends. You don't want to see your best friend being thrown under the bus. So of course you're going to lie and say that you have no recollection of these text messages when you clearly know you saw the messages. Now, Shamea, it's clear that you're guilty and you did show those text messages, because when you said, well, that bit of tea that Britt thought she was showing you, it only confirmed that I had already said that. And I said, Shamea, just say, you know what, I was wrong, I did it, I'm sorry. I had no right to show the text messages between me and my best friend to other people. And it also shows me, Shamea, that you like to throw rocks and then hide your hands. Because why would you do that? When I tell you I was here for Drew calling Shamea out, she says, Shamea, you are just over here lying today. That's not the truth. You told me and Angela that Porsha did not celebrate you getting a peach and you were upset about it. So let's stop. So Shamea is clearly trying to cover her ass, and she's like, no, 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 that's not what I said. I said that we didn't get a chance to celebrate me getting a peach. And Drew says, no, 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 that's not what you said to me and Angela. So Porsha jumps in and she says, I did congratulate you, Shamea. And now Shamea says, yeah, I know, but we didn't go out. And now Porsha says to Andy, first of all, that's a lie. So now we're at the last 5 minutes of this second part, and we're closing it out with the state of Porsha and Shamea's friendship. So Andy starts things off by asking, what's the current status of their friendship today? And they're both silent. They're both making faces, and now Porsha says there's no communication at all, and Shamea co-signs. So Porsha says, I could have gotten over whatever happened this season, but it was a smear campaign in the interviews that I did not like. Now, one thing about it, Porsha did not come to play. Porsha had all of her ducks in a row. She calls out all of Shamea's lies. She says, first of all, you sat up on Candy's show saying that I didn't call you and congratulate you on getting a peach. And then Candy finally asked you, well, did she call you? And you finally said, yes, she did call. So that was lie number one. So now Porsha brings up Shamea's Breakfast Club interview where she said that she only had one wedding, and Porsha says that was lie number two. So Porsha continues and she says, I have to clear my name because you obviously came on this show to sabotage me. So then she says it was a scheme and a plan. So Porsha goes back to the whole wedding debacle, and she says to use what the fans already knew, that I didn't come to your wedding. The fans remember how I went to your bridal shower and you were sitting next to Candy and Carmen laughing about my medical condition. So now you have Kelly trying to jump in, and Porsha's like, girl, don't laugh because I've turned planes around. So now Shamea jumps in to defend herself, and she says, well, Porsha, I learned this year from you that you didn't come to my wedding because we were beefing, and I had no idea that we were beefing at that time. So Porsha says, girl, let me stay on the point. The bottom line is, you knew that the fans already thought that I was a bad friend because I did not come to your wedding. That was how many years ago? You and I have had a beautiful friendship and I love you. So let me just stop for a minute, right? Going back to Porsha's beginning point about Shamea got on this show to sabotage Porsha. This might sound crazy, but I have to be fair. There's a part of me that feels like Shamea might have come on here with ulterior motives. And seeing how passive Shamea is, where she'll smile in your face and act like she's cool with you, but she's actually still harboring resentment and anger, it wouldn't surprise me if Shamea had this whole plan to take Porsha down in a way by airing her out about not being a good friend, and she gets to walk off like she's the hero and the victim. Now, like I just said, Porsha had all her ducks in a row because on Instagram, Porsha posted up the proof that Shamea did have 2 weddings and she was a bridesmaid in the first wedding. Then Porsha posted up the flowers that she sent you when you were hired as a full-time housewife. It has a note and everything congratulating you on being a full-time peach holder.
Oh,
Goddamn, Porsha done sent me to goddamn flowers up in this mud. Look at these things. Okay, I like it. I love it.
And she even posted on Instagram how proud she was of you joining the show. So you lied again about she did not support you or congratulate you. She did. This whole thing where you want to be painted out as the perfect victim, it's low-key backfired. Because now I'm looking at you with the side eye. Porsha has her issues, but you do too. Like we all do. Nobody's perfect, right? But you're not going to sit up here and act like you're just, Miss Innocent over here and Porsha is the worst person known to man. Because that's not the case. You're also full of it too. You have poor communication skills. So Porsha continues on and says, to watch you form an alliance with Kelly and Britt. And Shamea says, well, I tried to include you in the alliance. Now let's just stop right here. The fact that you're coming on as a newbie, your first year as a full-time housewife, why do you need to come on with an alliance? Why can't you just come on the show and see how it goes? We all know that alliances ruin these shows. So the fact that Shamea came in with an agenda to have an alliance with the new girls, it's another side eye for me. Because what are we doing? Just let things flow naturally. We don't need alliances. Porsha's not trying to hear it. She says, why would I have an alliance with Kelly who's coming at me and I don't even know Britt like that? So Shamea's trying to defend herself and she says, first of all, it was so early into the season when all this happened and I was always defending you to them. I was always telling them how much fun you were and I never said alliance. I said, let's band together as the new girls. So Porsha's like, no, girl, like, let's not do that. That's not what happened. So now Andy interjects and he brings up how Porsha wrote a really sweet post on Instagram for Shamea's birthday. And Shamea says that she thought that was really sweet and she texted Porsha back. And now Porsha says, yeah, and she continued her smear campaign against me right after that. So now we end things with Porsha and Shamea going at it. Porsha's like, Shamea, why are you fighting with me? And Shamea said, well, why are you fighting with me? And Porsha says, because you're lying. Now, I thought Shamea's response back was telling when she said, and you don't think that you've been lying too? I said, oh, okay, Shamea, so you are over here lying. Because if I were you, I would have said, well, what am I lying about? I wouldn't say, well, you've been lying too. So Porsha's like, well, lying about what? And Shamea brings up Porsha's Instagram post where Porsha accused Shamea's mother of doing something so egregious. And Porsha says, well, she absolutely did. And that's where we end part 2. Now, like I said at the beginning, part 2 gave what the other girls were supposed to have gave. I thought this was much better than the first part. I'm hopeful that part 3 will be just as entertaining because we have the continuation of Porsha and Shamea going at it over their moms now. Then we're going to see all the baby daddies and husbands come out, so that's going to be interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to next week, but I'm ready for Atlanta to be over and done with. This season has been a disappointment. I just had such high hopes, and to see the way so many have crashed and burned. Then we have Kenya's absence, Britt skipping out on the reunion. It's been a lot going on. But guys, that was my recap. I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you all for listening on the podcast. And you already know what to do. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all later. Bye.